growing, complaints from those that remain in them rising, hospital beds blocked. That is the toxic mixture of problems facing a social care system which councils are struggling to fund and which care companies are increasingly withdrawing from. Ministers are said to be considering allowing increases in council tax bills in an attempt to prop the system up. We're joined by Izzi Seccombe, who's the chair of the Local Government Association's Community Wellbeing Board, and Stephen Dorrell, former Conservative Health Secretary, now chair of the NHS Confederation. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Izzi Seccombe, are ministers talking to you about altering this thing called the social care precept? It's effectively a premium in our council tax bills, isn't it, to pay for social care?
We've had some dialogue with ministers about this, and the concern for us is the ability for this to actually fill the gap that we've for long now said that there is in social care.
So briefly go through the options. One option would be just to simply increase the amount of top-up, if you like, or precept that you can put on the council tax bill. Would that do it?
No, in our view, it would not do it. The 2% last year that was allowed to be raised about £380 million of those who actually chose to raise this, which not all did, but the majority, the vast majority did. The actual cost of the national living wage increase cost us £600 million. So you can see there is a gap there already. That's alongside the growing problems that we face with the pressures around demographic changes and all of the extra issues of a reduced government grant.
And we're hearing the government might be rather nervous of being seen to put council tax bills up. So all it might do is say, look, in any 1 year, a council might go above that 2% extra on the bill, but in future years it would have to claw the money back again. What would you think of that?
The problem we have is the variability of the tax base. So there will be some authorities that raise a reasonably large amount through the tax base, but other authorities who have a fairly low tax base, a lot of poorer housing.
So crudely, rich areas find it easier to raise money for social care and poor areas find it hard.
They do. And you will create a postcode lottery. And the problem then is that we are trying to integrate health with social care, and yet your health system is based on a national taxation.
So your message as a Conservative councillor, let's remember, to ministers is what? Simply put up the cash. We need an injection of money.
We need an injection now. We need 1.3 billion now because there is a shortfall by the end of 2020 of 2.6 billion.
Let me bring in Stephen Dorrell. Now, if you were still in government, Mr. Dorrell, it's been a while, but you know what it's like. Wouldn't ministers be tempted to say, well, we can't change the budget in the middle of the year, and we've been warned of crises year in, year out, and we're just about managing, to coin a phrase?
Well, there's one thing worse than changing a budget, and that's facing a crisis that develops and develops out of control. I think what I'm struck by, you were quoting Norman Lamb earlier this morning. Norman Lamb said at the beginning of the year, and I supported him at that time, so did Alan Milburn from Labour, that what we need to look to do is to have a review of the funding of the whole of the health and care system, because what we're talking about this morning is a cash shortage that is threatening the stability not just of local government but of the National Health Service. And unless we address this seriously, we'll simply see a developing failure of service across the range of local public services, and people will suffer as a consequence of that failure.
And the suffering will come by beds being blocked in the NHS and homes being closed in the social care sector.
It comes when people find they can't have access to care homes, so they end up in emergency departments, in A&E departments, in GP surgeries. They can't be discharged from hospital when they're fit and ready to go. And all of those are individual citizens who are being, for whom the quality of care isn't matching the rhetoric that politicians, national and local, are very good at using.
Now, isn't your own party, the Conservative Party, and indeed Izzi Seccombe's party, partly responsible for this? When there was a serious attempt to say that more money should be put into social care, it was dubbed a death tax, which killed it off entirely. Every attempt to actually raise more money, every report, the Dilnot report, for example, that was raised, they're killed off as being too frightening because they involve asking people to pay a bit more.
Which is precisely why I started off this conversation by referring to the requirement for a cross-party review, not to take party politics out of health and care, because you can't and shouldn't try to do that. But what we should be trying to do is to create a broader understanding of the issues. So we don't have a discussion on one day about social care funding and the next day about NHS funding as though they were two unrelated subjects. They're actually one and the same subject.
Izzi Seccombe?
Yes, I agree with that. I mean, we need to understand that this is a whole care system, care and health system, that working together we can understand the pathways from one into the other and where actually you start moving the money between the two.
And a last message from you, Stephen Dorrell. Would you think, again, if you were back in government, that fiddling with this council tax precept, the amount of top-up for social care, will solve the problem, or something much, much more fundamental?
Well, I think it follows from what I've said that we need something more fundamental. Having said that, I am actually in favour of being more flexible about the precept and recognising the important point that Izzi Seccombe made is that that has differential effects in different parts of the country, and that's a broader issue in local government which also needs to be addressed.
Why, in which case, you're in favour? So if it is a problem, to put it crudely, that Hampshire can raise a lot of money but Hull cannot, why is that the right mechanism to use?
What I said was that I think that's a step in that. What I'm in favour of is more flexibility for local government in raising cash to support and develop local services. But what I'm also in favour of is an equitable basis across the country to ensure that local authorities serving populations in less advantaged areas are as well able to support their populations as those in better funded areas.
Stephen Dorrell of the NHS Confederation, Izzi Seccombe of the Local Government Association. Thank you.